Hey, this is Ethan Diaz from DB Invest. If you want to learn how to use small acts to build an empire, you should be listening to the Small Acts podcast with my good friend Nico.
Hey guys, it's your boy Nico here from the Small Axe Podcast. I want to show you how to use your small axe to build a lasting empire. You see, not everybody begins their investing career with millions of dollars, a huge network of investors, or the knowledge necessary to become successful in this space, and that's okay. What I focus on here on this podcast is helping you hone your skills, sharpen your tools to become the best investor that you can be. Now, I want you to sit back, relax, and enjoy this show. If you have any questions or you want to reach out to me or the guest, feel free to do so. Love you guys.
All right, Small Axe community, it is me, your boy Nico, and today I'm hanging out with a really good friend of mine and a partner of mine. His name is Ethan Diaz. I'm going to get him on in a second, but before I get him on, I wanted to let you know that we met each other in a really kind of peculiar way. So I had hosted a meetup up in New York, and Ethan, being from Florida, flew up to the meetup. We met there at that meetup. He was only there for a couple of days. We hit it off, and then we got into a deal together. So never miss an opportunity to network, never miss an opportunity to build relationships with those around you, and it will pay off at some point. Anyway, without further ado, let me get this guy on. Ethan, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Nico, thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited that you're here. So you are a partner on the 44 unit portfolio that we own together down in Florida. And I know a lot about you, and we're going to talk about that, but let's give the listeners prior some sort of background information about you, who you are, where you came from, and how you got to where you are today. And then we'll hit it off.
Definitely, yeah. So my name is Ethan Diaz. I was born in Puerto Rico. My father's from Peru. My mom's from America. My father's a physician. His whole life, he wanted me to take over his practice, become a doctor. That was my whole goal in life. And my grandfather did real estate in Peru, and he used to always joke around with my dad that they made the same amount of money, but my dad had to go to work to make the money. My grandfather didn't, because he had a bunch of rentals in Peru. And that kind of always sparked the interest in me as a young kid to buy real estate, buy rentals. And I told my dad when I was around 15, 16 years old, like, Dad, I don't think I want to do medicine. I want to do real estate. And he was a very supportive father. Luckily, I have him as a great mentor and a role model in my life. He started buying me mentorships. We started with Ari Mentor, Vinny Chopra, Jake and Gino. So I started my real estate journey when I was 16, which was less than 5 years ago, in 2019. I bought my first property. It was an 8-unit property. It was a JV with my father. I was too young to be on the deal, so it was just him on it. I managed it. Luckily, we sold that one. We made some money on that. And then we jumped into syndication after that. For us, the 8-unit we spent more time on the 8-unit than we spent on our 100-unit properties that we had afterwards. So it just made more sense for us to sell the 8-unit and just look at bigger deals. Now I'm 21 years old. I've done 232 units of deals. I went full cycle on 8 of those units. We have 6 units in commercial, 56 units in self-storage, a few other properties in Peru that we still own, my father and I. Call it legacy wealth for my grandfather. He's passed down those properties. And those properties mean the most to me, the ones in Peru.
Dude, that's so cool, man. So you're only 21, and I'm hoping that my listeners here can kind of get some inspiration from today's interview, because it's important. We don't have to go the traditional path in life, and I preach this to my daughter all the time, and she asks me, obviously she's only 8, she's like, do I have to go to college? And I say no. And that's against the norm, right? But I don't think it's necessary, not for everybody. And it's awesome that you shared this with your dad at a young age, and he was supportive, and he started getting you involved in different things. And instead of paying for college, right, he's paying for these mentorships, which is awesome. What was like the first mentorship thing that you did? Did you say Vinny or something like that?
It was called Ari Mentor. It wasn't that good of a mentorship, to be honest. It was more of an old school one. I think Vinny Chopra was part of it. Gino Barbar was part of it like 15 years ago. So the content's a little outdated, but it got me into the space, right? I can't complain about it. It got me knowledgeable about it. When I was 16 years old, I wasn't like too knowledgeable about like the rental application process, right? I never rented anywhere. I never had a credit card, so I wasn't too knowledgeable about things in general, like the basics. So it taught me the basics. But my father, he always made sure I read. He said, if you're not going to college, do you want to live in my house? You have to read at least one book a week. So I would read a book a week, and it became competitive where we would try to read more books than each other. one year I read 54, I think, and he read 94. So it's a good, healthy competition. My father and myself. If you're not going to college, you're not going to go in the traditional route. You still have to educate yourself. So with these mentorships, these books, networking with people.
Dude, those are great tips, man. And reading 54 books a year is pretty incredible. What is that? I think like they say CEOs do something like that. It's a number around the 50s or something. And I remember too when I was in college. So I went to college for business, marketing, and management. And then I left college and I started working and I didn't like what I was doing. So I went back to school for Spanish literature. And I was reading a book a week in Spanish literature and it was grueling, man. I just couldn't hang. I couldn't do it, but I did it, but it was tough. And I think it is important that you noted that everybody else should note as well. Education is key. Whether or not you go to school, you have to educate yourself. And you mentioned books as one way. What are some other ways that you educate yourself?
Videos. I remember, so not only is my dad my mentor, but he's my best friend. So instead of going out partying with friends and stuff when I was 17, 18, we would stay home and we would watch like tax videos, seminars. We would just sit there and watch that all day. So I feel like videos, obviously networking with people with more experience than you. I was just at a conference this weekend and just talking to people, getting exposed to people who I've seen a little bit more than you. I know I might have been in the space for almost 5 years, but somebody who's 40, who's new to the space, I think they're smarter than me because they have more life experience. So even though I might have more real estate experience, I know they have more life experience. So always talking to people and learning from people older than you.
Yeah, man. That's a great way to be, right? We have to be open to suggestions and ideas from people that have experience in life. Man, you got it. You got it. You're rocking it. Now, what was this past weekend's meetup or group like that you went to seminar?
It was great. It was the Jake and Gino. It was, I think, the buy right, finance right. So I've been part of that academy for almost 2 years. My 2 years is coming up. So I didn't want to miss out on any of the in-person events before my membership ran out. But it was
Oh,
great, seeing people in the same space, um, just networking with good people.
so I always tell people too that they should be going to meetups. They should be doing meetup groups. They should do any type of organized event because it's important to understand how people are talking, get the vocabulary down, the vernacular down, learn about how people are looking at deals, where people are looking, network with people, etc. What when you go to an event like this, how do you approach it? Like, what's your mindset, or what are you planning to get out of it?
I'm very open to it. I just want to conversate with as many people as possible. In my head, I'm not like, oh, if they have this small amount of deals, I don't want to talk to them. If someone's new, it's an opportunity for me to educate. I know you know something the best once you start teaching it, right? So if I can find somebody new and educate them, um, a lot of people helped me in my journey when I first started. It took their time to teach me certain things in different academies. So if I can see somebody who's struggling and throughout the process in the beginning, because I know it can be overwhelming when you start and you go to these events and like, oh, you need to underwrite this. This is the underwriting template, and it can seem like a lot. It's like drinking water from a fire hydrant. So if there's any way I can help out with people like that, see other people to synergize with, do potential deals with, right? And for me, it's just a way to learn.
One thing that I noticed about the events, if they are bigger events, sometimes I get personally, I get a little overwhelmed and I don't know where to start. But when there's a small event, like we do little dinners here up in New York occasionally, and I get to talk to everybody basically. We're at like a big table and we're all talking. Is there a way that you deal with like the chaos or the overwhelming amount of people?
That's a good question. I also prefer the small events. So the Jake and Gino one is like all the members, and so this is one was small as well. The big events, I feel like just try to talk to as many people as possible. For me, I don't try to collect business cards. Like it's I mean it's like not a goal. It's not like Pokemon. Just like, how many business cards can I get, right? Just having good conversations with people. Then I feel like you can't really go wrong.
Yeah, I squeeze myself into people's like dinners and lunch events, and I just sit at the table. And I go to these events alone, so I don't have somebody to kind of lean on. I have to communicate with people. So that's one way I do it.
That's a good point. Sometimes when you go with like a friend, like for me, I go with my father. It's easy to get comfortable with just talking to him, staying with him. Um, but so when I was 16, my dad would send me to these seminars in Orlando, and he would always send me by myself. So I feel like that kind of got my feet wet with the whole like conference seminar networking style.
Were you nervous, man?
I was extremely nervous. I tell people I'm an introverted person, right? And Grant Cardone, he has a book, I forget which one it is, but he says no one's introverted. It's just they have less experience networking, right? So I don't know if that's true, but I feel introverted, but I feel like I really gotten out of my shell in the last few years of just going to these events.
Yeah.
And before it, people obviously see me as a young kid, right? So I try to take away any opportunity they can to discredit me, right? Dress the part, talk the part, know the vocabulary, be educated, knowing everything that you can, and try to seem as mature as possible. Because if I'm older and I saw a 21-year-old, I would also have some thoughts in my head like, oh, does he really know what he's doing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But then there's people like me, like my first thought is like, this kid is killing it. I wish I did that. Or, and not even, I mean, because we're always, everybody's always learning, or hopefully. I want to be with people that are always constantly learning, growing, and adapting. And whether that be a 20-year-old or a 50-year-old, I just think that that's awesome. And I think that it's just a benefit to be young because you have so many years ahead of you to kind of build up this portfolio more and the passive wealth more and keep growing, man. I love it.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
Um, yeah, man. So you mentioned you hold dear to you the portfolio in Peru. Why is that? Obviously, your grandfather, right? But
So my grandfather's not around anymore. He passed away in December of 2019, but I still remember him every day because I have to manage that deal, right? So his legacy's with me every day, and he's not somebody who I got to spend too much time with. He was in Peru, and he was a busy man, right? And so to me, that's like kind of my connection to him is the properties in Peru. And I've always told my dad, I'm like, Dad, these properties are a headache. Peru is a different animal. It's like the wild, wild west, right? Laws, everything. Um, so I told my dad, I was like, why don't we just sell it? And he's always like, no, this you'll see when you're older. And he always says that. And as I get older, I realize he's more and more right. And so yeah, so I don't think that's something I'm ever gonna sell. And the advice I've gotten from other partners and friends is like always hold that, never let go of that. And they've regretted selling things in their home countries as well. So that one does matter a lot to me.
how is that managing something overseas?
It's difficult, but I guess it's like the economies of scale, right? We have like a large enough portfolio that's completely vertically integrated. So we have four full-time employees. One of them does the maintenance, the three of them are like management. And so with having them, it makes it pretty easy. And everything I learned here in America, I try to implement over there. So for example, like we use a sauna here. I try to use it over there. My grandfather was very old school, everything was paper. And he would come into the office, read the newspaper, and that would be like their oversight or overseeing. He'd be overseeing the business, right? But with him not there, it's easier for them to slack off. But having the Asana, having the system, seeing like, hey, you only complete this many tasks, pulling the reports from there, that's made it a little bit easier to manage. And it's also given me like opportunity to get closer to my culture, learn the language a little bit better as well. Because you can have a conversation with somebody in Spanish, but then you're talking about finances, tenants, a little bit more detailed, words you have to learn.
Yeah, the vocabulary is very different, man. I wouldn't know that stuff. That's awesome. And how many doors is it, and where is it?
So it's in Lima, Peru, but Lima is like a big it's almost like a state, right? And then there's like the city inside it. So inside Lima, it's Pachacamac, and then Gamara, Peru. And in Gamara, we have around 100 units in commercial. We have another 5-story commercial building that we're developing, and that should be another 100 units of commercial retail space as well. And then we have a 32-unit multifamily property. We have some more land that we have that it's in the future. That land's in Pachacamac, which is known as the last valley of Lima. And so once the growth, there's a lot of growth coming there. So eventually we'll do a development there as well in the future. But
Dude,
everything that we have is for the most part with no loans. So there's no rush for us to build anything.
dude, that's so crazy. All right, 32 unit multifamily. I kind of want to just know like what are rents per month? I mean, I could kind of guess what they would be in like Nicaragua where I had my property. And what are rents and what is like vacancy and occupancy like over there?
So what I would say is like the difficult part about it. So it was originally like a 16 unit, like 2 bedroom, 2 bath property. And the way it's like a solis, I think always changing but I think $1 is like 3.5 soles, right? So if our rent is 900 soles, is like roughly $300 that people are paying. We added 16 or I think 18 more units of like studio apartments, and those have higher turnover because a lot of them are Venezuelan immigrants that come over. So sometimes we just rent whatever we rent it at whatever we can get it from that individual person.
So
And
it's not like standard. It's like whatever they're going to pay. You want to keep some occupancy and keep somebody in there to just get income.
correct. Yeah.
What are like so you have maintenance guys, you have is it property managers and do they speak any English?
They don't speak any English. We have a house in Peru in Pachacamac that's not too far away. We have a full-time landscaper there, or a groundskeeper. So he'll do the maintenance for that property because it's like a 3-minute drive. So he'll drive back and do the maintenance on that property. In the Gamada property, which is about an hour and a half from there, we have another guy he's very good at like the financials, but he's also a handyman when it comes to electrical work. So he does any things there that we need over there. Obviously, we contract out any big things that we need to do. Because the building's older, it's a 1984 build. It's not like the outlets aren't as strong as they should be, right? So we have to do all new electrical for the building at some point. So that's something that we're gonna do, like a contractor service. And then we have 3 girls that do like all the clerical work, collecting rents and doing all that fun stuff.
It's wild, man. All right, cool. And what about the commercial spaces? Like, what is it?
It's so it sounds bigger than it is. It's like a 5-story building. It says like 100 units, but it's not like these big units. It's not like a mall where you go in, you can shop around. It's like almost these little like kiosks. So imagine like a bunch of kiosks next to each other. So here, like, the employee almost has like no room to work. It's just like a small little space. They have all their shirts behind them. Let's say they sell soccer jerseys. They have all the jerseys behind them, like folded below the desk. And then the 2 top floors is used for production. So we have like a t-shirt printing company that they print the shirts up top, and then they distribute it to the businesses down below. The second top floor is people creating designs. So it's very popular in Peru for people to do like counterfeit clothes or fake clothes, right? So like fake soccer jerseys, fake Nike. So that floor they're creating they're like downloading Nike logos and getting it ready for the printing people upstairs. But it's very different than America.
Yeah, that's cool, man. All right, let's switch a little bit to the properties here. So you had that 8 unit. Were you collecting rent? Like, were you managing it, or did you have a property manager on that 8 unit, the JV with your dad?
It was almost a little bit of both. With the multifamily space, people teach you is like it's easy, it's very hands off, right? It's you buy a property, you hire a third party property management company, and it's all passive. But behind passive income, there's a lot of active work. And I didn't realize that with the smaller the unit sizes, that the less care that the management company will take for it, especially if it's a large company, because it's such a small piece of their pie. And our rents when we bought it was 8 units, $500 for each unit, right? And then we raised it to 800. COVID happened while we owned that property, and that was a mess. Half of them stopped paying, the other half moved out, and then squatters moved in. For us, what we found is it was easier to hire a local realtor. So we hired a local realtor who did management for single family, and he took a lot better care of that property because it was in a small city, a small market. That was our first mistake. And we had a property management company in Jacksonville, which was about like an hour drive from there. And we just found somebody local realtor. They took great management of the property. It started cash flowing very nice. And we just doing syndications was such a headache, just going back and forth to that property, putting money into that property. So we decided to sell it. We bought it for 330, and then we sold it for 450.
That's awesome, man. And you probably learned so much. And that's the thing. Some of these deals, like it's invaluable what you learn by doing them. They might not be the most like fruitful. And same thing with the deals we're working on now. The new systems that we're working on, the new processes, just working with a big team. It's such a learning experience, and it's invaluable. I'm not taking any money. I'm not getting paid, right? But it's invaluable because this education is going to last me forever.
Definitely, yeah. And then with that one, I didn't manage it, but it was very active, like helping out with the leasing, helping out, meeting with the contractors, driving 2 hours out there to the property. But it was a great learning experience. My dad says no mistakes, just learning lessons.
Yep, I love it. And then you did some bigger stuff, and you met like a group that's based in California, I believe, but has stuff in Texas.
Correct. So eventually I worked for Vinny Chopra. He was my mentor. I was 18 when I joined his group, so I helped out. And he had another these like one-on-one students that needed some help underwriting this deal. I underwrote the deal for them. They paid me for the underwriting. And then the second deal they sent me, they said, "Hey, do you want to partner 50-50 on it?" and it was a risk because I didn't know them too well, right? I heard great things from John Rusin, who worked for Vinny as well, and from Vinny. I took that risk. I went to Texas with them, and they've been probably one of my biggest mentors. Is that group? It's I say group is just two guys, Thomas and Brent, but they've helped me out so much. They have a bunch of units they have in LA that they manage. I think about 4,000 they manage in LA, so they can kind of see through the property management bullshit. And it's definitely saved us some money with the Texas property that we have, the 104 unit we have over there. Because don't have time for the BS.
That's wild, man. 4,000 units.
And my thought is if they can manage 4,000 in the toughest market, I would think in the country, then they should be able to manage 100 unit in Texas or help with the management.
Awesome, man. I think you were mentioning that you might sell that, but is that off the table now?
So we bought it for 7 million. We did a refi in January for 10.3 million, and we bought it in August 2021. We had an offer for 10.5, and then they retraded to 9.5. So we just said no. Our bottom price would have been 9.8, and we're in no rush to sell. We have a fixed rate. It's cash flowing nice. It's basically stabilized. It's a nice quiet property, and all the capex is basically done. So if we can hold on to that for 10 years, 20 years cash flow off of it, I don't see why not.
Were you able to give money back to the investors on refi?
So for the refi, we decided to hold the capital for a reserve only because of we're so cautious of what the market is right now. We're afraid of what's going to happen. So we have it just sitting there, and all the investors were okay with us putting it into a CD. So it's just earning interest right now. We do give back distributions quarterly, at a 7% pref return, and we have the reserves there waiting for them to eventually distribute.
That's awesome, man. All right. And so let's say what would like somebody who's brand new, they're looking to kind of get into their first deal, what would you recommend doing the same step, taking the same steps like education, doing a small JV, then syndications, or what would you recommend?
Syndication is not anything I would recommend at all, I feel like. And I think get your feet wet, read it, pick up a book. Um, sometimes you go to these conferences and you're shocked about how little people know sometimes, right? They'll ask you very basic questions. Like might be a syndication conference and they're like, hey, what is a syndication? It's like maybe I feel like you should have probably read a little bit before you took the next step in investing into paying 20,000, 40,000 to a mentor. But I think just reading as much as possible. You can never read too much. And then I think single family makes the most sense. I've worked with people who've only done single family, and their knowledge of maintenance and capital expenditures is vast compared to mine, just because they've done it, right? So for me, when I was 16, I didn't have a house, I didn't have a rental I owned, right? So I think just starting off as small as possible, doing a few JVs. If you can find like a 12 unit in your backyard, you can find 3 partners, you guys JV on it. Knowing your roles before going into the deal, that's always everyone's big thing, right? It's like having definitive roles before you jump in, and putting that in your operating agreement as well. Hey, we're gonna do an annual meeting to see if everyone's following their roles. If there's not, we're gonna restructure the LLC, right, or something like that. Make sure everything's written out before. And I think just starting small. I think syndication is very risky. I know a lot of people have lost people's money, and in my head, it's like, why would you raise $2 million and potentially lose it if you don't have $2 million to give back to the investors and cover their losses?
Awesome advice, man. So let's say you had it in reserves in your own capital fund, right? You have a certain amount of money, but you want to get your friends and family involved. I think that syndication is really should be left for people that are more experienced and more vetted anyway. Even if you did have that money on the sidelines ready to give back, I think that unless you're coming in as a pure capital raiser, right, and you're trusting a team that you have already vetted and you know how to vet them, you should be more educated, in my mind, to do syndications.
No, definitely, yeah. And it's almost like if anybody did syndication from like 2013 to 2019, you can't really, get an idea of how experienced they are because it's almost like everything appreciated and did well at that time, right? With those low rates. Now you can really see who's the experienced like syndicators who can go through the hard times. So it seems great because everyone was making money back in the day. You see it on LinkedIn, close this many deals, close this many units, right? And it almost makes you trigger happy. Like, oh, I want to do a 100 unit deal. I want to do a 200 unit deal. but I've met people that have 3,000 units with like less than 1% of my equity, right? Um, so I don't think people should get caught up in the unit size, more of the equity you have in the deals.
I agree, 100%. I totally agree. I mean, I was 190. I was a partner on 194 units, and I owned 3% of the general partnership, which owned 30%. So I was 3% of the 30%. And it's like I put a lot of work into it. So, but in the end, is it really worth it? I don't know. The experience was
Mhm.
financially, no, but the experience was absolutely worth it.
They say like there's ROI and ROE, right? Return on investment and then return on efforts.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sometimes, dude, we try so hard to get these deals to work, and then the the return is so low for us, right?
I also think that there's so like you mentioned, everybody did wonderful when the economy was booming, right? And now it's make or break. It's like if you don't know what you're doing, or if you're not going to buckle down and learn properly, then you're going to swim. You're not going to swim. You're going to sink. And it's important right now nowadays to kind of really vet the deals better. Make sure that you know who you're getting involved with. Make sure you know the property, the market, the debt, and don't forecast a refi. Don't forecast like selling this and flipping this in a year or two like the past has been. You can't. Now we have to hold the properties, and we have to make sure we're cash flowing. So it's not an easy market right now.
Definitely. It's almost like gambling, right? It's like, yeah, I'm gonna buy this property. Let's say when the rates were 4%, four and a quarter, and I'm gonna refi at five and a quarter. Like you're just gambling that's only gonna go up 1%. And like when people ask me, hey, what's going on in the market? I say, I don't know. I was 6 years old when the market crashed last. I have no idea. My whole life has been an up market, right? Um, that's around the time I moved to Florida from Puerto Rico. 2006. So then the market crashed right afterwards. I didn't understand anything that was going on, right? Um, so for me, it's just like try to be um as conservative as possible when underwriting. And if
Yeah.
the deal doesn't work out, then just skip it, then go to the next one. And a lot less pencil out, but the ones that do pencil out are hopefully the good ones.
You know what stinks, man? I see these deals go for what they shouldn't go for. Like I'm underwriting them and I'm like, okay, I'm coming in at let's say 1.5 million, but everybody's offering 2 million and then I lose the deal and then they're struggling with the deal. But I hate it. I hate the fact that there are people that are groups that come in and swoop up these deals, smoking the hopium, thinking that they're gonna or not underwriting properly or just whatever it is. And it's like driving prices prices are still too high, competition is still too strong to where it's like I still can't get a deal that makes sense. And it might be like this for a while, but I do think competition has kind of cooled off a little bit. I just don't think that, and prices have definitely decreased, but not to the point where they still make sense. So
Definitely. Like in the past, it was always you calling the broker trying to get a deal, right? And now it just feels like my phone's blowing up with brokers trying to get me to submit an offer. Like they're begging for offers, right?
they are, yeah.
So
But there's still people and groups out there that are either learning improperly or are too trigger happy or are just too gung-ho looking for an acquisition fee and they're offering more than they should. And I hate it, but it is what it is.
I think an issue with that is people think that they need to retire and do real estate full time sometimes. And what ends up happening is they're relying on those fees. They become fee hungry, do those fee grab type deals, right? Where it's like 4% acquisition fee, then the refinance fee, right? Those fees are part of the deal. You're part of it. But for example, the 104 unit, in the beginning, we felt like we didn't want to take out the acquisition fee. So we left it in there for 2 years. We left it in our reserves for 2 years just in case. Because we're not surviving off these fees. And some people are surviving off these fees, and that's how they have to feed their families. So they end up forcing themselves into bad deals sometimes.
Exactly. And it's a it there's a conflict of interest, right? I mean, it's like is your real goal? Is it to get a great deal for your friends and family, or is it to get that acquisition fee to survive? Not a good way to operate. So I agree. Ethan, let's switch a little bit. Are you still looking at deals? Like, what's the future going to look like?
Always looking at deals. I know you're looking at deals. If you send it to me, I'll look at it. I'm liking the smaller deals. My dad and I did a JV. We bought like a warehouse that has like some commercial space in it, and it was one unit. We subdivided it into 3 units, rented it out. Um, and so we're very happy with that one, just cash flowing. And it's nice to not have to worry about like distributing your cash flow. We just let it sit in the account, right? Not having people, because you don't know other people's financial situations. But for us, we rather just keep in the account. Sometimes with investors, one of them might have a bad year, right, with some of their other investments. And they might want their capital out, or might want their distributions. We're looking at deals. I was just in Texas, so always looking at stuff in Texas. There's a lot of deals on the market right now in Texas, in that greater Dallas market. But like you said, they're just not penciling out. And then I'm going to Michigan on Wednesday to tour a few properties, 184 unit, and then a smaller 12 unit. I want to get my feet wet in that market, so we're going to do a JV on a 12 unit, get 4 partners, just buy it, no investors. Everyone's an active partner in that one, just so we know the market before we start raising capital and risking people's money.
So cool, man. Ethan, I love what you're doing. You're inspiring me as well as all my listeners out there. Thank you. Let's do our final question. Let's imagine it was 100 years from now. You have great grandchildren or a bunch of dogs running around that are happy as can be. They wanted to write a book about you. What would you want them to title this book?
Great question. I think if I had to pick one title, I would say He Was There. The only people who really know how hard you work is your wife and your kids. And that's because they know how much you're not there. So like my grandfather, he's great. And like I said, his apartment is the legacy that he leaves in how I remember him. But I much rather remember him of all the good times we spent, right? And my mom's father, my other grandfather, he was not as successful with business, but I'm a lot closer to him because he was always around, right? So I think he was there. And sometimes you lose sight of that, right? What the true goal is when we get caught up in work.
Oh man, that's awesome, dude. I love it. He was there. Presence is key, man. Anyway, I love it. Okay, so let's move on. Let's get people some form of contacting you.
Definitely. So my email is Ethan, ETHAN @dbinvest.com, DBINVEST.com. My website is dbinvest.com. Reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. I'm always looking to network with people. I'm in the greater Orlando area, so always looking to network people in person as well.
You're the man, Ethan. Thank you so much. And I will see you on all of our calls this week and next week. And we are nonstop. So Let's keep chatting. But if people want to reach out to you, please do it, guys. Reach out to Ethan.
Thank you, Nico.
All right. Hey, Small Axe community. I would like to say thank you for listening to another episode of my podcast where we show you how to use your small axe to build a lasting empire. Now, if you liked what you heard, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and write a review. Also, if you want to get in touch with me, go to my website at smalaxecommunities.com. Book a call with me. And until the next episode, keep sharpening those axes.